So when I was born here in 1996 in New York, Manhattan, I thought I was a U.S. citizen. With my case, it was kind of a nightmare. 3 years ago today, I was supposed to go out of town with my friends. I haven't really left the country, so I decided to go apply for a passport. I get a letter in the mail saying I am not a U.S. citizen due to my father's diplomatic immunity, which I had no clue of.
And he gets a letter from applying for a passport because his buddy wants to take him on a trip outside the United States, thinking he's a citizen, and he gets a denial from the Department of State that says he's not a citizen. So I looked at this and discovered, yes, there was this area of law where basically children of diplomats they're considered immune from the laws of the United States, which is a positive thing if they were to get into trouble, but also a negative thing because they're also not subject to the jurisdiction of the laws here as far as birth goes. And so usually, the Constitution applies and anybody born in the United States is considered a U.S. citizen no matter what their situation of their parents are. But that wasn't the case on this small percentage of a case that Jacob fell into.
If I could go back and how it felt, it was a disaster. It's weird to explain. At first I was really scared. What was going through my head was, I was like, you know what, maybe it's just a mistake they made. So I talked to a few attorneys before Jesse, and they kind of gave me some information. None of all of them, those two that I talked to, really scared me. They made it seem like I was going to face deportation and I wasn't going to get far with it.
The diplomatic immunity stuff is pretty complex. It's not something that every immigration attorney is going to see, and maybe something I won't ever see again in my career. But I looked at it and went, okay, this is weird. I don't like this. And he had already seen some other attorneys, and they didn't want to take the time to look into it, which is probably what my guess is. There's competent attorneys out there, but there's ones that choose not to look into certain cases that are difficult.
Once I finally found Jesse, and he told me what he could do for me, it made me feel like, there's a chance of it, and a lot of stress just lifted from my shoulders.
I actually looked to see if there was any other way, and we found this kind of backdoor way to get him a green card. And if he got a green card, I knew I could eventually get him his citizenship back. But he was going to have some challenges. One, he voted. There were some other things that kind of looked like false claims to U.S. citizenship that we had to work through. And it was this area of law that nobody knew anything about. And when I filed it, I knew that. But I was confident that he fit within it. And basically, he had to give up his diplomatic immunity. He had to sign this document that gave up his diplomatic immunity, and then he could become a green card holder according to the other statutes and forms that we filed. So we did that. He was fine doing that. He wanted to be legal somehow. So we did that. When we got to the interview, I told Gina, they're not going to know what to do with this, so be prepared.
They were asking for evidence, medical, nothing that related to his situation. So the following week, I had an appointment at USCIS. I printed out the policy. I asked for the supervisor that was called into the interview, and I just politely explained that I didn't feel the interview was conducted correctly, that I felt he was being analyzed as a diplomat, not the child of a diplomat, which was different. I showed him the USCIS policy that I printed, gave him the copy, and just asked him to review to see if he would agree. And I was very grateful. He actually reviewed the policy. He did agree. He said we did conduct the interview incorrectly. We did analyze him as if he was a diplomat. After reviewing the policy, he does not need a medical. He does not need to have that done. We do not need the additional information. And I am reviewing his case under the interview that we did conduct just to make sure we have enough information, and I'll get back to you. And within a week, his permanent residency was approved.
He had some challenges, some uphill battles, but it was such a cool case. It was such an obscure, weird area of law that nobody wanted to touch. I think that's why Jacob has such, admiration for what we did, because he had already seen lots of people that had turned him down, and it just took a matter of getting on the computer and doing some research and some phone calls to Washington, D.C. It definitely took some legwork, and I think you had to be the right person to want to do that. But again, it was one of those challenges. I didn't want to be told no, because I felt really bad for a kid that thought he was a citizen his entire life to be then told you got to go back to Iraq, which was in a war-torn country that he doesn't obviously have any connection to. He hadn't been there since he was 6 years old.
I would absolutely recommend Westover Law Firm. If anyone in need of immigration, status adjustment, whatever it is, they went out of their way for me. And like I said, I was at the lowest point. I was like, I don't know if this is worth fixing or worth going about. And Jesse, Gina, and his staff made it seem like it would be easy for them. And they took their time, they did their research. They'll make sure you leave with something. And not just tell you, oh, hey, we can fix it for you and give you the runaround. Then you're stuck here waiting, like with my previous 2 lawyers that I was waiting. What I was, worried about, I was like, what if I don't get through it, like what am I gonna do? Don't, this is who you want to come. Don't waste your time somewhere else. This is exactly where you need to come if you're in that process as far as immigration wise.